we have done all the prior requirements. We have fixed any problem. There are only 3 warnings that we are aware of. Some is just the way that configuration manager look for the information. Others, like the WSUS, we haven't actually even looked at. So those are okay for now. So now, finally, it's time to install configuration manager. But before the installation, there are some files that configuration manager require during the installation. Let me just bring here the documentation, and is the setup downloader for configuration manager. So this software that's part of the configuration manager installation will download some files for us. We can actually download this file or use this tool to download before we start the installation of configuration manager, like I did, or we can have this tool being run as part of the installation. So it depends if you have internet or you don't have internet. On my environment here, I have the internet access, but to speed up, I already downloaded. So, but if you want, so it's quite simple, just download COPPA, for example, the setup, or execute the setup DL on the configuration manager machine or any other machine. But if you just want to copy a specific files, here it tells you which files it needs to download. This one is the setupdl.exe, so you copy that file. And there is another one, let me just scroll down a little bit here, is the setupdl.res.dll that's going to be in a subfolder. If you were looking for the English, will be on the forum, lots of zeros and 409 at the end. So those 2 files are required if you want to just have those files copied elsewhere. Otherwise, you can just execute the file. So I'm going to execute the file here. I will not download, but just for you to actually see what it is. So here on the DVD, SMS setup being x64, and we have then the setup dl.exe. As soon as you double click, you have the path and you click download. So I already downloaded, let me just show you here. I added this on the ctemp SCCM 2103 read dist. So you can see here lots of files, SQL, server and client language. So in total, we have about 60, 70 files in total, but some of the files is extracted. So you download once and then it's being extracted. And it's about 1.3 gig in size. So it's not a lot. And now, finally, it's time for us to look at the configuration manager setup. But before that, if I bring up the documentation, we need to understand how configuration manager works. So, and this needs to be done before you start with configuration manager. So how many sites we're going to have, where the sites is going to be. So configuration manager has 3 types of sites. One is the primary site, that this is the one that's manage devices. The second one is secondary site, that's a child of the primary site that will be able to, between quotes here, manage a subset of the primary site's devices. Kind of a proxy, let's say like that. And the third one is the CAS server that's on the top of the hierarchy and doesn't manage anything but connects multiple sites together. So if you think about numbers, if you have more than 150,000 devices, you will need a CAS because a primary site can only manage up to 150,000. And now in this case, if you have 300 or 250, you will need to have 2 different primary sites connect to a CAS. So through the CAS, you're going to manage all the devices. On terms of a secondary site, it's kind of, like I said, a proxy of a primary site. It supports normally about 15,000. So, but on terms of this is just numbers. We need them to start looking at physical locations, network connectivity, and much, much more than just numbers. So in this can actually show you exactly how you can have, even if you are spread across the globe and you have less than 150,000 and really good network bandwidth, you may be able to use a single primary site. Maybe the bandwidth is not that great. You could maybe use a secondary site, or if you have more than 150,000, you will need to have a multiple primary sites. So this is some information that you need to have before you even start installing Configuration Manager. From our environment here, we are going to start with we are going to install a standalone primary site. Okay. The other thing we need to know is in terms of the infrastructure. So Configuration Manager does require some ports and protocols. So normally it's TCP. But communication from the client to the server could be port 8 or 443, normally those two. There are a few others that it depends on what we are doing. And of course, internet access. So if the internet access is through proxy server, we need to see if some of the roles or everything does support proxy servers. And internet access is a requirement, but can be done in a different ways. So we are going to assume that we are going to use internet access. That's probably about 90% of the Configuration Manager installations. And finally, the installation of the Configuration Manager. We need to know how many sites. We need to know what's the Configuration Manager site code. That's a 3-letter, could be numbers and characters, but cannot be some of those. AUX, CON, NUL, PRN, SMS, or ENV. Those cannot be used. And of course, we need to use a name. It's not just the site code, but also the site name. So in your case here, we are going to use some general installation codes that I'm going to use here. So PR or P01, primary 01 in this case. And to start, we are going to use here setup.exe from the Configuration Manager CD, SMS, setup being x64. So on the wizard, I'm just going to click next, and I'm going to install a primary site. I'm not going to use any default configuration, so we're going to see all the steps to be done. So not actually Configuration Manager doing everything for us. Next, license key. In your case here, we are going to install evaluation. If you have the license key, this is the time you put the license key. Next, I will accept the license terms for almost every single Microsoft product that can be used or will be used. And here on the prerequisites download is where I put the path I'm going to download, or if I already downloaded the files, I'm going to put where I downloaded. In your case here, I already downloaded. Just put in the path and click next. So now Configuration Manager is checking if the files are actually correct. It should not take longer. While they are doing the validation, remember to like, share, and comment. And if you are asking questions, put the hashtag #AskRaphael so I know it's going to be easier to find. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That's going to help the channel to grow. And of course, will help other people to find the channel as well. Well, now that finished that part, checking the files, it tells the server language. So I'm going to use only English because I really don't know the other languages. But there is a few languages that we can actually use, well, including Portuguese Brazil. So this one I do know. I click next. The second one is the client language. So the configuration manager client on the devices will be in the language that the OS is. So again, I'm just going to leave English, but you can actually select many other languages. I'm going to click next. And here is the site code, site name, and where it's going to be installed. In your case here, I'm going to use P01, but remember, this has to be unique. So you have multiple sites in the whole environment. This has to be unique. So you cannot have two P01. One will need to be P01, the other one will need to be, for example, P02. Site name, in this case here, primary site endpoint managers.com. And if I can type endpointmanagers.com. And the installation folder, again, I'm installing everything on the D drive. So I'm going to change to the D drive. And because I'm going to have Configuration Manager installed on this machine, it's best practice to have the Configuration Manager console just for you to start doing the initial configuration. So I'm going to use here, install the Configuration Manager console. And I click next. It tells me if I want to join a hierarchy. So if we are going to have a CAS, I need to put the server name of the CAS, or it's going to be standalone primary site. In your case, it's standalone primary site. And next, it is telling you, okay, do you really want to continue? But later on, if you want to add to a hierarchy, you can do. I click yes. And it tells me what is the SQL Server name. In this case here is server 03. What is the instance and what is the database name? Remember that we already created this on 02. So I'm going to put here SQL 02. And the database, remember, it starts with CM underscore, and we have then the P01 already created. And the service broker port 4022. So this is a port used to replicate data between different sites. So in your case here, will not actually, doesn't matter what port we are going to use, because we are going to have a single primary site. But if you have multiple ports, remember, you need to open this into the firewall. I will click next. And here is where we are going to install the files. So because the database already created is already giving me the correct paths, and the SQL is already configured properly. So I just click next. And where is the SMS provider? I will install on the 03 as service 003. This is the reason. So before, the reason is this SMS provider is a middle tier between Configuration Manager and the database. So Configuration Manager does not access the database directly. It accesses the SMS provider, and then the SMS provider accesses the database. So we use a different language, so it's WQL, to perform the connectivity to SMS provider, and then the SMS provider changes that query, WQL query, to a SQL query. So we are going to install in the Configuration Manager itself. And here in the communication, we are going to use the simplest method at the moment as possible. That is, we're going to configure the communication for each site. And then later on, we are going to change and play around with this. But this basically means is we're going to use HTTP instead of HTTPS. HTTP is less secure than HTTPS, but a lot simpler to create, because HTTPS, you need a full PKI environment for that. So and we don't have that here as yet. Maybe in the future, we never know. In any case, here we're going to select configure communication method for each site row and click next. And installation of measurement point and distribution point, we are not going to talk about those as yet. So I'm going to disable and click next. And now just diagnostic data, tell Configuration Manager what Configuration Manager collects from the usage. So click next. And here is the installation of the service connection point. So we are going to use the service connection point on server 03 as well, but this is basically the server that's connected to the cloud, either to manage some cloud resources that we're going to see in the future, or manage updates. In case of updates for Configuration Manager update. So if there is updates available for Configuration Manager, which hotfix needs to be installed, and so on and so forth. We're going to use on the server 03. So click next. And now gives us a big summary, what's going to install, where going to install, all those kind of stuff. And we just click next. And now what Configuration Manager is doing before actually allowing you to install is checking if all the pre-requirements have been met. If there is anything that is not right, that is error, they will need to be fixed before we actually continue. Similar what we did before on the prereq check toolkit, but now is built into the Configuration Manager. It's exactly the same rules, nothing different. But while the prerequisite check is being carried out, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comments on the comment section below. And if you have any queries or any questions, just use the hashtag #AskRaphael, so it's easy for me to find all your questions. Okay, so the prerequisite check finished. You can see there is still the same problems we had before. WSUS, permission to publish in the Active Directory, that we know we are using groups instead of the server itself. And the last one is the SQL Server native client version, because, well, it's not installed, it's just a warning that for us to remember to update this in the future. So right now is just click begin install. So let's click begin install. The installation, it depends, of course, the environment can take between 10, 15, 20. I got cases where it took about 1 hour. So, but there is a lot of steps that Configuration Manager is taking, and all those steps are recorded in the logs, and then I will show you guys later on the logs. So right now, let's leave the installation to, well, let's leave the installation to complete, and as soon as the installation is completed, I will come back to you guys. Okay, so the installation has been finished. You can see here there are loads of green marks. There are some parts here that are actually not green. They are kind of blue. But the clock finished. And if we click here, view log, and you scroll all the way down, we can see here that the setup has been completed. So the reason is we have the green that has been fully installed, and some tasks that are still not completed is because Configuration Manager does on the setup, some tasks need to be completed in fully, some tasks is just I'm installing, or it takes a little bit longer to install. Now we can see here, everything has changed to green, because then the whole installation now finished. It doesn't mean that we finish installing Configuration Manager, because there is a hell of more work to do after the installation. But this is something for the next video. If you like this video, don't forget to put a like, share with your friends, co-workers, and also subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And if you haven't left a comment or questions, if you have any, just leave in the comments below. If it's a question, start with a hashtag #AskRaphael, so it's easy for me to find out. Thank you very much, and I see you on the next video.